Welcome to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. This is Will Crozier.
And I'm Nikki Westcombe. We are the founders of Nexus Performance. Joining us on this wild ride is our heavyweight coaching team, ready to unleash their expertise to solve any problems in your journey to getting strong and jacked.
Through our real-world experience, we hope to break things down in a digestible, applicable, and entertaining way.
So pump up the volume and let's get into this.
Josh is skinny now.
Fuck. But I get 2 refeed days a week, so that's 2 lots of pancakes.
Do you mean cheat meals or refeed?
Refeeds. Pancakes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's just start the episode with that.
Does he call them cheat days?
No. It's just a it's pancakes, but it's like homemade. I've got the recipe.
Homemade.
Yeah, they're
really?
1,500 calories.
Do you use a packet recipe or are you talking you
make
get
it
the flour
myself.
out?
Self-raising flour.
Wow.
Homemade recipe. It's the greens shake and bake.
It's self-raising flour, sugar, vanilla extract, almond milk, mixed together. Fucking taste mint, and then cook her up, and 1,500 calories later, you're done.
It's not that's not the fitness industry.
They're
Protein
the most
pancake.
disgusting looking. Like I cannot make pancakes very well, and the batter's quite thick, so it doesn't pour super easy. So I just get like big blobs of dough, basically, and then I just eat them. It's mint. It still tastes fucking good.
Yeah, I mean, you can't not when it's sugar.
I
Literally sugar and
100
flour.
grams, 100 grams of sugar. When he first read the recipe out to me, I was like,
how many serves?
And he's like, yes, 100 grams. And I was like, fuck oath, these are going to taste mint. And they do.
How many serves is?
No, I don't look at that thing. I don't look at things like that.
Do you consume all of that batter in one meal?
Yep.
Yeah.
I
And
have
it's got
to eat it
100
within an
grams of
hour.
sugar.
Yep.
Fuck.
Yeah, I have to eat it within an hour.
Loading it up.
Yeah. And then the maple syrup on top.
We need some insulin for you if you pass that endeavour.
Very much so.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Absolutely would spike me through the roof.
But I check my blood glucose the next morning after, and not too bad.
Yeah.
It's like not that much higher, which is good. But I noticed the effects, like from a training perspective, is good. Like I feel really good after them.
Yeah. Well, like you said,
really.
You just finished your cut. You were down.
Oh, yeah. Welcome back.
How many?
To Nexus.
How many kilos?
17 kilos total.
Over
15 weeks. 16 weeks, technically.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Pretty good.
Roughly just over a kilo a week.
Yeah, about 1.1 kilo.
That is I would say.
That's very aggressive, by the way. That's not a normal rate.
I was going to say fairly aggressive and usually moderately long time as well. Like typically if you're going to go, the harder, it's like training, the harder you go, the less you can kind of do to some degree.
Yeah.
Before it comes back and bites you in the ass. The dieting's the same. So I would say that's pretty much, that's leaning towards the harder side of it for sure. I had to be feeling that.
No, not really. There was never really a point where I turned around and was like, oh, this fucking sucks. I hate it. Just the fuel, like just the way in which I was, like the food I was eating and the way it was all programmed I just didn't feel, like I was honestly, my calories ended up going up by over 800.
Yeah, I know.
And I was still dropping weight.
I know your performance was pretty decently steady as well.
I hit PBs on pretty much every lift besides pressing movements.
Yeah, and this is not science. This is not hashtag science. There's no study to prove this. There might be. I don't even know.
No idea this.
Haven't looked it up. But I find when it comes to diets, when you're doing it right anyway, not when you're doing it wrong, obviously, but when you're doing it right and you're following it and you're seeing the results and you're tracking metrics, you can see the numbers moving, everything's going well. Results are like fuel. As in, like, it's easier to, well, I won't say easy, it's easier to come in, do a hard session, progress when you can literally see the results, like rolling in, both in the gym and like the mirror and the fucking energy or like health, whatever it is, fuck all that shit. It's just, it's not technically fuel, but anybody that's done it, I think would agree, is like, it's just easier. Whereas when you're going through a diet, like you feel like ass and like everything's, you're like, you're doing it the wrong way. That's when it's demotivating. It's fucking.
The other thing too, I guess, is like it's important to know. Like I didn't get like really, really lean. Like I wasn't getting like show lean, bodybuilder lean, anything like that. It was just quite literally take off all the fluff, excess shit that I just didn't need.
We'll call it less fat.
Yeah, way less fat. I'd be down towards like at least 10% body fat now, roughly. So for me, I was up towards like 20 to 25 by the end of my fucking bulk. So like that's a pretty considerable drop. Health metrics are the best they've been.
How many mirror poses per morning?
Nah, just once a week.
No, I mean like just for yourself. Like you walk into the pitch and you're
Not
just like,
prescribed.
Nah, only here. We've got the best lighting here.
okay.
My lighting at home's shit.
That sucks.
So it's like sometimes it's okay. And
that's a good metric to track as well, you know, when you catch yourself in the mirror, you're like, fuck, you know, things are going well.
Filming a few more sets.
Yeah.
A couple of cheeky angles.
That's the real fuel right there.
Yeah. How many likes did I get on Instagram stories, etc. But yeah, now it's 2 refeed days a week. Maintenance.
Yep.
Fucking cruising.
And like we spoke about last week, keen to see how your training goes in. We'll give that a few weeks before we touch back on that.
Yeah,
I feel
definitely.
Like touching on it week by week is a bit.
I get a deload next. I'm going to deload next week, the week of states, because I'll just essentially take that week off.
Life gets in the way. Same for me, essentially.
Big weekend
we got
coming
Pro
up.
Raw this weekend. I got Pro Raw. I'm going down to Melbourne for all those days to handle people on each of the days, and then jumping into I'm going to stay down there and hit Knotfest, the music festival down in Melbourne.
Is that why you're staying down there?
Yeah.
I had no idea why you weren't coming home. I just was like, oh, okay. Sick.
Don't like us.
Yeah.
Well, I could have went to the Brisbane one, but the Brisbane one is on the weekend. I don't know if it's on Saturday or Sunday, but it clashed with the comp with the APL states that's here that I have people in and I need to go and help, and they're my priority for that. So my solution to do both was just to stay in Melbourne. And
it's a shame you're going to Knotfest this year instead of last year that actually had Slipknot.
I don't give a fuck about Slipknot. Send it to him. Send it to Corey right now. I don't care.
I'm sure he'll really take.
He will
take hard effect to that. Like that'll really get him down.
Hey, that Will Crozier, fuck that guy.
At W Cross, I heard what you said about me.
Yeah.
Banned.
No, I've got Pantera and Lamb. I'm fine. There's a few other ones, but I'm really down for them.
Yeah, that's sick. I got my final concert tomorrow night.
Who is it?
Movements.
Final.
Yeah, that's it for the year. Don't bought any other tickets.
You just die after that.
I'm done.
Yeah.
The last 12 months has been fucking hectic.
Yeah.
And after Saturday nights,
there'll be more.
There will be, but just not for the foreseeable future. Not till after Japan.
Not as much.
I keep spending too much money.
It's all right. You're enjoying life.
Oh, I've been having a great time.
Right.
Had the best time of my life.
It's all right.
Saturday.
It's okay to spend money.
Wednesday night's going to be sick. I'm excited. So that's it for a while.
Pull your mic up, Alex. Get it in there.
Get it right in.
Not quite, but yeah.
Do you like that?
What are you going? You've got. Did you have any before our one? Before Tesseract?
Well, it's funny because I don't know if I ended up saying it to you. I think I did. There was Harkin put out a show literally the night before.
Yep.
And in Brisbane as well. I'm like, that would be just so punishing going back 2 nights in a row for the same style of music band. It would be dope, but it's like that's a mission. And I think that's the only show that they're doing that I could see.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go see them again because I saw them in 2017 and they were excellent. One of the best live performances I've seen in a long time.
Look at all of us getting in on our music.
Just nerding it up.
You know, I love it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Live music
vibes, gym vibes. We got it all here.
Everyone Saturday was going to Fred again. Not me and the boys.
Absolutely.
We were going to be sad at Princess Theatre.
Was not riding my bike down there.
Not getting on the line bike for that one.
No. Fuck yeah. The Spit is like the worst place to have a concert. Anyone on the Gold Coast, the Spit is like where SeaWorld is. That kind of like little island. There's one road in and one road out.
Yeah.
And so like to have thousands and thousands of people jammed.
You would have loved to have owned a boat.
Yeah, to get around. But
could have rented that out. Actually,
if you had a boat
cash
and drove it up, picked people up, taken them off, sorted.
Jet skis,
cash money.
It's Gold Coast.
You wouldn't be putting people on the jet skis.
It's Gold Coast. They'll do it.
Yeah, coppers everywhere. Guys on pingers on jet skis.
Yeah, I was going to say
probably not ideal.
Yeah.
That sounds like a wild time.
Pitch black. Probably not a recipe for.
Try and make a jump into SeaWorld.
Save Free Willy.
We'll get into today's topic. I've just generally called it squat issues, quote unquote issues. We've got a few different squat related problems that people have in their squat. Pretty frequently, I would say. In powerlifting, we're trying to keep it to the context of powerlifting, and we'll go into this in each of them, I'm sure, because it grinds my gears as far as like people completely taking shit out of context and then putting it on Instagram as if it's gospel. That's a fitness industry. But before we go into this, I just have a note here that
He's bolded it and everything.
That yeah, because this is again,
it's a very serious note.
It annoys me to some degree, is that people are individuals, and when we coach people, at least for us, like we treat them as such, as in like people are going to have issues like this in their squat that aren't going to have, hey, this is the answer sort of outcomes, as in like we're not going to go to fix this, then do this. You know, it's just, we're not computers. We don't have inputs and outputs that just always work in programming and in solving problems like this. So we're going to treat them like generic things today. We're going to say things that in our experiences, both on ourselves and on clients, that have worked for us. But Bowser's knocking at the door.
I called
trying to knock down the door.
Not even 5 minutes.
And he's getting big, man.
But but so we're going to treat them as like generalist sort of answers and approaches to these things that have worked for our clients and for us. But just for an at the start little kind of start to this. I'm going to let this dog in. My God.
Yeah, she was holding him.
Yeah.
That we these are individual, and if somebody came to us with one of these problems, it might not be exactly what we're going to say today.
But it's a good place to start, and it's, I think just like you said, keep that caveat in mind that it may not always be straight A to B or A equals B.
Yeah. I mean, like a lot of the problems do have similar answers because, like, we all have arms, we all have legs, we all have the same joints and bones and muscles and whatever, but we all have different injury histories, different
morphology,
to some degree, a little bit for sure. Especially after the years go on, like I said, people pick up injuries or just wear and tear, just habits from past experiences, just thoughts and beliefs, even like just worldviews and their understanding of like how shit works. All this stuff will change people to some degree, even though we're physically like pretty fucking similar.
Just responding to cues and different cues and things like that.
So again, going to be some level of individual between us, but we're going to go over generally. So the first one we've got here is just knees caving in a squat. So as in like somebody doing a squat, and pretty common thing, out of the hole typically, their knees are going to come in to some degree. Stop it. I'm sure, without even asking, but I'll ask it anyway, that we've all had a client or people in the gym here that have had this quote-unquote issue, yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Has it always caused problems? Is it not a problem? Like, how do you guys view it when it comes up?
Depends on the on the instance, because I think if someone is doing it from the very get-go, like if they've not really had a great deal of experience squatting before, and the first thing that starts to happen is that, due to the way in which we're looking at their position, I think that can be cause for a little bit of concern. It could show that don't do that, Bowser. It can show that their strength within certain ranges may not be exactly where you'd want it to be, just due to the fact of like, but if they're doing it like a fucking long time and that's the way they've squatted forever and blah, 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 then I don't necessarily see it as too much of an issue.
Yeah.
Just because coming from that position, like if you're just straight up, and you'll know exactly, like coaches out there will know exactly what I mean when they're like, you see someone do it without control, and you almost see people do it with control because they've been doing it for such a long time. And I think there's a distinct difference.
What do you mean by with control?
With control shows the fact that like they're not just like dropping into that position and that's what's causing that. They're sort of more or less controlling that position. So for me, like I would use almost George as an example. Like even when I put her on tempo squats, 3 seconds down, 2 second pause in the bottom, one of the first things that happens is her knees internally rotate and they come in. They don't knock together, but they come in probably considerably more than like mine would, for example. And she's always done that. Like they look controlled. It's not as if it's like she's just lost all tension and they're just slapping together because she can't physically control that position. Versus like having people come in and they do it, and they might even do it with like a goblet squat. And the first thing that happens is their knees just like bang together because they can't physically hold that position very well.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between like quote unquote controlled and not controlled.
Yeah. And Alex, what are your thoughts? I mean, probably pretty similar, but do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think like quite often you might get a few people that have that as an initial complaint about their squat. They're like, oh, my knees go in. And generally that's coming from a less experienced person who maybe doesn't have that understanding.
Well, that's a worldview thing, like I just said, right? Like
Right.
that's a thing where they're
I've heard my
viewing
knees
problems
coming in as bad or whatever.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
then
they're labeling things.
Exactly. And it might just be that you have a look at that and then see if it is a problem. Is it something that is, it's moving the feet position and they're losing tension there, or, the squat is just not very strong and they're not very stable in those positions. But more than often than not, it's just something like a simple cue might fix with a person like that if they are very new to it. And it's, it's one of those things that people come in like, oh, I have this issue. And then it's like, we talk about a couple other things and move on to the next and it's no longer a problem.
Yeah. And they get cued knees out straight away.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to get to that. So there are a couple of common circumstances where I personally would view it as a problem. Like if somebody, like the first one that comes to mind, if somebody's like a bigger person, and they have a belly in the way or something like this, and this is the same as deadlifts. When they descend in the squat, if they're standing narrow and then their belly kind of rests there, and then to get to depth, because you have to in powerlifting, and they're probably thinking get to depth in their head, that makes their back round over, and then that change in pelvic position leads to like their muscles being leveraged differently, and those people will typically have absolutely like no control through their pelvis, and their hips will be rocking around, and because of that, their knees will be rocking around, their feet will be rocking around, everything's rocking around. That's not a good time, right? Same with their feet. If their feet are really like coming in, and their knees are just like, as you said, to get like there's not really a controlled element to it on the way down or the way up, I'm seeing that as a problem. If somebody is like holding their knees fairly steady into the hole, I don't want to just, this is a very broad thing, but like if their squat looks good, if their back's fairly, the spine's fairly neutral, hips are holding pretty steady in position, everything else just looks controlled. It feels good to them as well. And then when they get to the bottom, when they go to reverse that movement, their knees come in a little bit. I'm not really seeing that as a problem, right? So yeah, some things like that lead it to either being a problem or it kind of not a problem in my mind, and by the sounds of it, your guys' mind as well. So this leads to, like you said, Josh, like cues being applied in powerlifting, because we're all about cues. We do 3 movements. We're a pretty simple sport. Powerlifting is a sport about efficiency. This is another thing, right? Like people might have an uncontrolled, like what we would call quote unquote bad knee cave. Maybe on the eccentric, they just fall into it. Like they never even attempt to control it. They just kind of ride with that. And then some guy on Instagram will go like, well, that's not a bad thing, because if you look at these basketballers or these football players doing a sidestep, their knees cave in and they're still fine.
Right.
And it's true. Like there is no like inherent position or movement in the body that is like just fucking bad. Like don't ever bend your spine, or don't ever extend, or don't ever flare your rib cage, or whatever. Like anything at all. There's nothing that is like just an absolute no-no in any circumstance. There are just going to be places where movements are appropriate, and then places where movements aren't appropriate to complete a task. Different tasks require different things. They're loaded in different ways. There are different speeds. There's fucking just so much differentiation between all this shit as to what happens and what our body's reaction to it is. And a sidestep or a small, a jump in basketball, or a landing out of a jump or whatever, just because they get valgus in that doesn't mean that we can, or knees in that doesn't mean we are just go like, oh well, if it's fine in that, it's fine in a squat, because they're completely different tasks, completely different kind of outcomes.
Sure.
So that's a side tangent into something else that kind of pisses me off.
Did you highlight that in bold as well?
I didn't. No,
okay.
No bold. Otherwise, everything would be bold.
I wish we could show everyone our sheet. Sometimes.
Yeah. But yeah, that leads us to the cue thing. So what do you usually do if you see, well, in our industry, what people generally do when they see somebody, their knees come in is cue knees out.
Knees out.
Now
spread the floor, knees out.
Yeah, some sort of whatever.
Create external torque at the hips.
Yeah, lots of different ways to cue very, very similar actions. And as we've talked about cues on this podcast a million times, like different cues, different people, different thought lines, different whatever, might be looking to get the exact same thing, whatever. But we all know like these generic cues. Now, sometimes these cues get shat on with the industry. Probably knees out in more recent years is one of them. I don't know. Like, what are you guys? What's your thoughts on the knees out being a cue?
Knees out fucking railed me back in the day. Like, I would always think personally. Yeah, personally. So what I would always think, knees out, knees out, knees out. So I was essentially jamming my knees out, despite the fact that that was not how they wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And funnily enough, I just ended up with a heap of knee issues.
Okay.
Quad tendinopathy, patella tendinopathy, tore my patella, like so many different knee issues
that arose. You think relate back to that?
I would say so, because I was essentially trying to overrule my body's natural way of moving into a position. Like, realistically speaking, like, I've been sitting, standing, walking, running, jumping for now coming up to 28 years. Like, my body knows how to move. It knows how to do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And I was essentially telling it, no, we're not going to do what you think is best. I'm going to tell you what's best. And never really progressed too far. And it wasn't until I think you told me one day, just stop thinking about what your knees are doing and set your feet.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then there's absolutely two sides of the story, by the way.
Yeah. There's like, this is just what worked for me.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it fixed it entirely, but it definitely was like on the pathway to success, in better success long term.
Yeah.
Stopped getting as much knee issues, especially through squatting movements. But I think just using like such a generalized cue for everyone, as we always know, like as you said, like there are some cues that are just bastardized and everyone hates on them or loves them or whatever the case might be. But I think just using general cues for every single person is not necessarily the way, because at the end of the day, like, we are all individuals in the way in which we do things.
Yeah.
And we need just different things.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like with mine, like if I squat, not like I've had a lot of problems with squatting over the years, and particularly when I came even into this gym, I think I was squatting like 50 or 60 kilos. My hips were just going all around, which is obviously something that we'll talk about. But my proclivity is for my knees. If I just drop straight into my squat, my knees do come in a wee bit, and it doesn't feel as one comfortable or too strong.
Yeah.
So the knees out for me a little bit is something that I still kind of set with. It's a cue that I've learned not to exaggerate or just push my knees out, but something that I just kind of internalize as part of my setup, just to get a little bit more external rotation at the hip, so it just fits into that groove a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I find that helps across globally most of my squatting movements. So I've probably had a little bit more of the opposite experience. However, I've had clients that have definitely taken that cue too far, and another one has been needed, to kind of replace that, to put in the mind of the person I'm working with what I'm actually looking for, as opposed to what they interpreted.
Yeah, and that's a good point, is that like any cue can be taken too far.
Yeah.
Like if we're talking about lats on a bench press, a little bit to hold things in place, almost at the shoulder or to whatever, awesome, cool. If you're cueing so much lats that your elbows are touching your body, your torso, like maybe we've gone a little bit too far, and now it's going to turn into like a face, I don't know, skull crusher or some shit. And
JM press.
Yeah. It's, but like, and with this, yeah, absolutely. Like for me, I'm more in Alex's camp that it was a good cue for me. And I think generally, if we're talking real general here, I think it's a good cue for powerlifting. For most people. But again, maybe like Josh back in the day, he can absolutely spread that floor way too far to the point where you're fucking on the outside of your feet, only a third of your foot's on the ground. You're riding that really kind of outside of it. You're just pushing limits, and then there's no force left to give, because at some point your foot needs to be flat and be able to put force into the ground to be strong, right?
Can I ask, were you in like a really wide position then, or were you more narrow when you were squatting at that time? Do you remember?
Before I started with Wilbo, I was super narrow.
Interesting.
Then I went then I went the complete opposite direction.
Yeah.
I went stupid wide.
So I've found as well, just on that topic, it's like the wider people go, there's more proclivity for that knee to drag in, right? So especially in the context of powerlifting, people are generally squatting a bit wider, I would say.
Definitely.
My experience.
Yeah, low bar squatting minute, yeah.
Right. So it's like the knees out, then you would generally say is probably going to be a useful cue for a lot of this type of population in this sport.
It's interesting you say that, because I've seen the other effect of, like, I feel most people's knees come in when they squat really narrow.
Right.
So like if you look at
I think it can happen in both.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to happen in both. But like from my what I've just seen is people who squat stupidly wide have a tendency to not move in a position that requires them to create too much internal rotation because they're moving through different various areas of their body. And that was the same as me when I was squatting stupidly wide. I didn't need much internal rotation of my leg or shank because where I was actually moving through was not in that position. Sure. Whereas like it's like almost like a sumo squat to a degree. Whereas like you see people who do squat quite narrow, whether it's a tendency to like lose tension in that bottom position or not, that's when I see their knees come in a little bit more, whether it's just it's actual normal knee movement and it just looks more exacerbated due to the fact that their feet are so much closer, which I think could definitely be a cause for one of the reasons. But it's just like you kind of, if you were to go and watch like IPF, for example, where they all have a tendency to squat quite narrow, especially more of the smaller females, that's where you see like a lot of knee cave. But like they're fucking putting up 3 times bodyweight squats comfortably.
You can do a lot
of move how it's going to move.
Yeah, they're still,
it is hard to use examples of people though.
Fuck.
You can get really strong in a lot of
You get strong in any position you build over time.
Yeah. But I think most people, it's not going to be a bad thing if you don't take it too far. A little bit of like spreading the floor or twisting the knees, however you want to kind of like cue it, whatever resonates with the person, I think is going to lead itself favorably to a powerlifting squat, to a squat where you need to just squat to depth, as opposed to like if I was getting somebody to front squat or do a normal back squat or whatever for the sake of just general strength building for another sport or whatever, I might not need to say it so much because like they're getting a lot more depth and they're just getting general strength. I don't know. It's just a slightly different thing. So it's an efficiency thing. I don't think it's something that everybody needs though, but they think they do. Just quickly, we skipped over one part. It's like why they actually come in most of the time in a scenario where it's not a bad thing is just like where we're talking about the pushing out a little bit on the way down, they're holding in a good position. It's very controlled and everything. And then they come in a little bit out of the bottom and kind of bring us back to that level foot and pronate into the floor, push into the floor hard. Like our adductor magnus in particular, massive hip extensor. And at that point, on that turnaround where you're trying to generate force out of the bottom, you're going to need your adductors to create that hip extension. What else do your adductors do? They kind of they pull in a little bit, and so often you're going to get a little bit of that. But as long as it's kind of like just kind of coming back to mid, which most of the time it is when it's controlled, and probably not the end of the world. So I think that's enough for knees caving.
Summarizes it quite well.
Yeah, knees out
because there's definitely a couple of other.
Yeah, knees. Use it if it feels good. You know what? Use fucking any cue if it feels good.
Yep.
use what works.
Yeah. Have a picture in your mind of what it should kind of look like or what's better, and then use whatever you need to think about or whatever you need to use on your client. Say whatever you need to get them move closer to that. That's cueing 101 right
Beautiful.
there.
Yep.
The next point we've got here is just hip shifts in a squat in particular.
My favorite.
Love a good hip shift.
So most of us, or most people that I've worked with have some level of it, whether they know it or not. If they don't know it, then a lot of the times if it's not an issue and it's just minor and I'm just like, whatever, I'm just not even going to bring it up. Yep. But most people, if they zoom in close enough and put enough slow-mo on the video, you'll see something shift around to some degree. And
don't even need a slow-mo, my vids.
No,
see it perfectly.
It's by the eye.
Yeah. And but somebody comes into the gym. This is even a little bit more nuanced than that last one, and we are trying to keep it general, like I said, not at anybody in particular or whatever. So, but somebody walks into the gym, and they have like some sort of hip shift going on in their squat. What is your general thinking towards that?
Start off.
You can start us off this time, mate.
Very good.
Don't handball it too hard.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, it's like, okay, like sometimes you might even ask like that question of just like, cool, like how does it feel? It's like, no, it feels good. It's like, okay, it's probably something I wouldn't spend too much time on or even bring up. Like I've definitely done a lot of work with people that are overthinkers or even, in courses and stuff that overanalyze this stuff to the point of, almost no return, that it's like, what are we actually trying to achieve here? And maybe you limit load and you do these things and strategies that, just are unnecessary for that kind of person. But generally speaking, like if you have, a hip shift, it's like, okay, there might just be some deficiency of, internal rotation happening at the hip is probably the first place that I look at.
Mm-hmm.
You could do a couple of tests and you could look at that. You could just even have a look at how they move through a single leg, split squat or something and see if you get a little bit of that happening there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, if it's not causing any pain and it doesn't look too drastic and they're pushing well through both of their legs and everything else looks good on the squat, it's not too much of an issue on my end. But generally, something like some more single leg work will balance that person out.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, people are going to be,
another debated topic in the industry, that one.
For sure. But generally, people are going to have some kind of, asymmetrical deficiency there of strength in right to left. And it's like, okay, cool. Just making sure that we are doing enough of that at some point in their training routine and try and balance that out over time is generally my approach.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'd say very similar. I guess one of the things that I look at as well is like most people who hip shift and things like that in the very bottom position, if we're looking directly at a squat, I have a tendency to be a lack of control and tension. So for me, it would be, okay, let's address brace. And I know myself personally, if I do not brace as well from rep to rep, the reps where I'm not as braced, not as controlled, not as in that centralized position, I have a tendency to hip shift more into that right hip. Like I'll always probably hip shift into this right hip. Unfortunately, I just think it's something now that I've just accepted. I've still gotten stronger and stronger every single time. I've only had a couple of issues with it, so it is what it is for me at the moment. But if someone was like, as you said, like if there was pain present or something like that, yeah, cool, let's address it a little bit more. If we can just correct it from something as simple as teaching them how to brace and control that bottom position a little bit more. If maybe the answer is a couple of single leg drills, like I know myself at the moment, one of the best things I've been doing pre-squats and deadlifts is just some B stance RDLs, time under tension, really trying to shift into that hip, create that internal rotation through both of the hips to a point where it feels comfortable. And then lo and behold, I fucking sit into that position. Now I've opened up that range and I've gone and strengthened it. I think too many people get caught up in like, oh, I hip shift or this might be the case. And they'll go do a bunch of stretches or some really low level drills and they'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
They'll go do their like, oh, good.
That's the button.
I think it's just the button. Yeah. I think you just, they'll go do their B stances or their stretches or their front foot elevated lunges or whatever the case might be. And then that's all they do. And they just leave it at that and call it a day. And then it's like, well, you haven't loaded into that position to actually make it want to stay and adapt. You've just kind of like given it a really low level solution and just left it there. And then they wonder, oh, why do I hip shift next week?
Yeah, for me, somewhere, it's one of those things over the years where I've gone from really trying to zoom in on the problem and go like,
is it flat?
That's fine. We can really zoom in on the problem and go, we're going to do this tiny, really kind of rehabby, isolated drill to try and fix it. Honestly, pretty minimal success. Sometimes, we fucking just hit a lucky strike or you hit the nail on the head and it works. And I'm like, great, awesome. That could be argued that it was more, maybe it's like a placebo-y type thing. Like I've told a person like, oh, we do this drill to fix it. And then they just try a little bit harder. Who knows? But I've had way more success in very low, much more low level and then global approaches to it typically. As in, when I say low level, it's going to sound dumb, but it's actually extremely common with this stuff, is like if you haven't got the bar centered on your back, chances are you're going to load one leg more than the other because like the weight's going to be more on one side than the other. So first things first, check that it's in the middle of your back. Get somebody to line you up. You'll be surprised how many people are off with every single squat they do. I know one of my shoulders is a little less mobile and doesn't move quite as well as the other side. And I will set up, these days I kind of got my routine to set up fairly close consistently, but still whenever it's anything heavy, I'll get somebody to check. And quite often I'm off a couple of centimeters and you fix that up and it feels to me like it's way off, but it's, if somebody's checking, I'll trust them more than me. So that one is where I'll start. Same with their like stance, looking at if one leg is way wider or way more turned out, or anything sort of like asymmetrical about their setup in general, I'll check. And just that'll be just like the real low hanging fruit, because that shit's fucking easy to check. And it's like, hey, if this makes it better, then save me so much thinking and effort.
So it's like, let's get the squat right first as much as we can, and then
first
point of call.
And then to that, like I'm talking more global addressing of issues, as in I probably wouldn't go down this road as much if somebody was an advanced lifter and a really good lifter, because the chances are it's probably not going to be. But for most people that are at that intermediate or below, which is most people, whether you like it or not, it's just getting better at squatting miraculously tends to make these little things go away. So like Josh said, getting better at bracing, hey, that fixes fucking heaps of issues. Just being more controlled in your squat and learning to just slow it down a little bit and get your foot pressure even on the way down, or whatever it is. Just setting up the same every time and making your squat sequence, your little checklist the same every time. A lot of these things go a long way. And then just generally getting stronger in squatting as well. So sometimes the way, if somebody has a bad, it'll often present in all variations, but usually I'll go, hey, it's presenting really bad on like a really loadable variation, so like a low bar, high bar even. If I can strip that load away through variation at the start and go like, we're going to do a front squat, or we're going to do whatever squat that's like low load. Sometimes I'll still have a shift, but hopefully less pronounced, and we can start to like somewhat rebuild it while still having a high level of like effort. And we can still train hard on it. It's just a little less weight necessary. And then I treat it like anybody who's trying to get strong at squatting. And then typically over time, they get better at squatting. They get better at being more symmetrical in their squatting, which is actually just a general skill as well as like a, call it a hip shift or whatever. Like it's often, just being better at it. And these things will often go away over time.
Yeah.
I find.
Yeah.
As in, it's just, like you brought up the thing about, single leg or single stand, work potentially being a thing. So if one person has, let's go an extreme example of that, and they've been hit by a car or whatever, and like one of their legs is, the nerves are a bit, and their one leg's way smaller than the other. One, they've torn a quad or whatever on this side, they have knee issues on this side, whatever it is, but one side is way off than the other, then I think that's a good idea. The argument for that comes in, I think, on a, like, could we potentially say, like it makes sense when you first say it, as in like, if I do split squats and I'm doing each side, quote unquote, individually to correct issues, to fix a hip shift in a bilateral movement, I think it's sometimes we're viewing it the wrong way around. It's like maybe by doing the bilateral movement, it makes us get better at it, and then help us distribute load more evenly through each side, and then that could potentially be a better way of fixing these imbalances, as opposed to like individually targeting them. So like, sure. I'm not saying that there's no right or wrong to it, but I'm just saying it's a different way of thinking towards it. Is it
chicken or the egg?
Straight away we go to like do them individually to correct these imbalances, but like I don't know. I just don't see it. I'm sure people in a rehab scenario have more input on this, but I've never given somebody split squats and then their just legs are like the same fucking size or overnight, like, not overnight, but like, I'm just like, they're always kind of like that.
I wouldn't say it's like necessarily like a quick fix, but like even sometimes you might even just have kind of like what you were saying of like, oh, I'm pushing more into this hip. I can feel what that's like. Maybe you've got a better sense of proprioception with what you're doing there as well, and you're bringing some more awareness. Maybe just someone who doesn't have great awareness of what they're doing with their hips and their knees and stuff.
I'm not saying single leg training doesn't have its place. I just don't know if it's for that reason. I think it's more like that. I think that's a way better explanation about why to do single leg work, is because it teaches you to control your hips in different ways, to move in slightly different ways, to just bring variation to the hip and how you fucking move.
I guess like one of the questions there is like, do you get that from doing it more low level and developing more awareness, or do you do it just by doing it heavy and getting fucking stronger in those positions? It's like you could argue for both there.
Well, I think it's always going to come back to like a little bit of like the whole it depends. But I think in terms of like if you have someone come in, and again, if we use someone who's like more of an advanced lifter as an example, like realistically speaking, if we were to take someone who can squat 300 plus and give them a fucking 15 kilo dumbbell and go, yeah, go do a single leg front foot elevated lunge, this is going to fix all your problems. The second they go and put 200 plus on their back again, all their issues are going to come straight back, because the way in which you're loading the exercise and like the actual stimulus they're going to get from that is fucking nothing in comparison to quite literally just squatting. Whereas like we can look at things like maybe adding a secondary squat day where they might have their low bar day and they're doing that for more or less quote unquote their skill work or their heavier day, and then you have like an SSB or a front squat or a high bar with a tempo or something that's like teaching them to actually sit in that position a little bit better.
Yep.
And from that, it's to squat, it's creating that spatial awareness. Or like for me, I use my heeled lifting shoes on one day but not on the other day, and it's more or less just based upon the position in which I'm trying to hold in that squat. One's a low bar squat, one's an SSB. I prefer to stay more vertical in my SSB. It feels more comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more narrow in my low bar. I'm a little bit more wider stance, but both of them are paying off for each other with that just same position and grading over time.
Yeah, well, it's like what we were saying before of just using like, okay, we're just using a less loadable variation to kind of get the job done more efficiently, so that they can transfer that over. And it's like, well, that's why we use variations. We've talked on that, at nauseum on the podcast, you know what I mean? But it's like, cool, it comes back to that as well. It's like,
give the body problems to solve.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got a few solutions for it.
Yeah. So there's very much not a direct answer to fixing hip shifts, but some good experience, thoughts around it. Because, it's definitely not a do this, that's the answer sort of thing. It's a, hip shifts in particular are very complex.
Well, it's shifting, just push your knees out more.
Pretty funny because as I said, like I've had hip shift for years now. Like pretty much every video I've ever seen of me squatting, I've shifted. And I have gone to countless physios, osteos, chiros, massage therapists, fucking ex-physios, everything you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
To be like, how do I fix this? And almost all of them have given me a different answer to the question.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I kind of just got stronger. And it didn't necessarily fix it, but I got stronger in that position, and it was just didn't become of an issue anymore.
Yeah. 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 And that's not to say that people are wrong. It's these are complex fucking problems. And sometimes
there's a lot more to it sometimes.
You have to try things. Simple as that. The last one here is this one is a little bit more simpler. At least we have an answer for this one. I feel that we've got a fucking good control on this one, but it's the best ways to improve squat depth. So I actually did an Instagram live on this a couple weeks back, where I talked whatever it was, 15 minutes or so around this. So I'll let you guys maybe talk a little bit more than me, because otherwise I'll just say the same shit.
How to improve squat depth? Squat deeper.
Yeah. Load the bar more. Push it down.
Push it down.
Yeah. Simple.
Yeah, a bit of extra help.
Drop. No. It almost has like the same.
It has the opposite effect, I tend to find.
It almost has a very, very similar answer to the last one, and that is quite literally do it more. Get better at it. I find, use a client from this morning as an example. He said to me that like the biggest thing that was limiting hip depth was his mental. So he squatted more. And now he's like, oh, I'm just confident. I just sit deeper.
Yeah.
That's it. Like it's just quite literally time spent under the bar doing the thing.
Yep.
The more confidence you can build, that's going to come with it the benefit of strength. It's going to come with it the better benefit of like proprioceptive skills and your efficiency within it and things like that. But it all just comes back to just doing it more.
Well, it is a skill. It is a skill for sure.
100%.
So like I'm sure you didn't just go to him, okay, we're just going to do 1 RMs until you can squat to depth. Like is that
not the answer?
The equivalent of like some kids trying to learn a bike and you just fucking put him and you just take him to the biggest hill you can find and push him down and go, you're on your own. Just you'll learn at some point, or you'll fall off and die. No, we definitely
parenting 101.
It's just you don't want to give them the most extreme challenge as a place to learn, right?
No. Lower risk environments.
Give them the best chance to succeed in whatever way you possibly can. So I'm guessing you gave them some sort of variant or variance or multiple over the week or whatever it is, or over blocks to allow them to get the outcome with as little sort of needing of cues or little sort of needing of like them having to think about it too much or whatever it is, and just give them the opportunity or the best environment possible to get it fucking right. And then you go onto the bigger hills and you take the training wheels off and stuff like that, and to use that analogy. Yeah.
Tempo, volume, and frequency.
Yeah, and different loading ways, or
just like, I guess I'd put that under the umbrella with the volume for this context anyway, was more or less like, okay, well, we had one main day. I basically never took squats out from his program at all, obviously, but it was just progressing. So we took it from sets of 6. We did push all the way up to a little bit of testing. Now, obviously, very, very sub-maximal testing of ones over a very long period, and then brought it back again and just built confidence within those ranges and things like that.
Yeah.
But then adding just a secondary squat throughout the week, and then putting that into just something like a pendulum or something like that as well, where he learned to feel out that very bottom position and was like, oh, I can actually get
strength in those positions.
Yeah, get strong in the bottom position without having to worry about like, oh, I've got a barbell on my back. Someone can go to failure quite a lot easier on a pendulum than they do with a barbell. It's a hell of a lot safer too, for the most part.
Yep.
I don't really want to be catching barbells. It's easier to stand someone up on the pendulum.
Or just leave them out.
Yeah.
But quite. It just like, for me, it's just like, I see 90%, like most of my clients improve with just their confidence, but it comes back to time spent under the bar doing the thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like that's how I think one of the biggest things I even just have reiterated to some guys doing, a lot of squatting now, coming into like the novice comp and things like that, of just developing confidence just by doing it and just doing it better. Like, I just got better at squatting and, better at holding my position, better at holding tension, better at keeping pressure in my midfoot as I descend through. And, it's like I always used to have trouble squatting to depth. And it's like, now I've got absolutely no issue sitting right onto my heels, you know what I mean? Particularly with like a safety bar or something where it's a little bit more, I'm more opportune to get into a deeper position, right? And yeah, you're doing those variations. Like, I remember when I first started doing a lot of squatting, I had 2 sessions of low bar every week. It's just punishing. And it was just like, it didn't give me opportunity to use another variation to just find some different positions, or maybe even some different cues, some different ways of thinking about it, different ways of solving the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And then coming in, particularly when I was working with Zach here, lots of different variations, heaps, many opportunities to explore deeper positions. And like you were saying, just get more confident in those positions is probably the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's like, if you're not confident to load it there, it's like, cool, maybe do it unloaded first. Use the pole, use something for support so you can get down and spend time there. How else are you going to get there with heavier load if you can't even do it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
With a goblet or a front squat or something that's a little bit helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just doing that, and you do it over time, and you get plenty of practice, plenty of confidence, and your brain will be able to put that together after.
Well, if you can't, if you get people, and you've both dealt with them for sure, I know you have, that just like you put a bar on their back and they just like can't, like they just fucking, not because they've had injuries and stuff, those people exist, different, absolutely different, but people that just can't work out the balance thing. They either just good morning, like just fucking do a good morning, or they try to put way too much knee in it and end up kind of like just running out of room there. They can't get that nice balance between hip and knee and just balance points and to be able to sink in nice and comfortably. You can always just quickly use front loaded variations, safety bars, front squats, goblet squats, whatever one is more suitable for the loading on which they're at. That's absolutely going to help everyone squat to depth, because you put a weight in front of you. It allows you to kind of counteract that and to counterbalance you. And then that counterbalance is just going to let you be more upright. And then that position is going to lend itself to get into a super deep squat. nearly everybody I've worked with can do a deep bar squat like that. If they can't, and sometimes even if they can, you can also use a heel that does the same thing. So if you're walking down a hill, you automatically lean back to balance yourself. It's the same thing. You put a heeled shoe on, makes you kind of, again, same thing as putting a counterbalance on, allows you to kind of be a little bit more upright and be there. So those two usually allow people to squat deeper. And then, like you guys said, you do those things a lot. You squat deep a lot. You've developed strength and confidence a lot in those deeper positions. And then all of a sudden you put a bar on your back, and sure, it might not be quite as deep, but I can guarantee it'll be a lot deeper than previous to those. But one thing I was going to say that's a little bit different to the IG Live that I did is that, and this is a common thing in powerlifting and almost powerlifting exclusively, is that powerlifting is a very numbers-based sport. As in, like, we always, if I did 5 at 100 kilos on my squat, this last prep, most people have this mindset of like, I've got to do 5s at 102 or 105 or 110, or like I've got to beat last time. And that actually leads to a lot of problems, because I'm not saying you shouldn't be stronger. Like, ideally, in a perfect world, we're continuously getting stronger. And if you're doing everything perfectly, great, that will happen. But guess what? Life isn't perfect. Shit happens. Speed bumps come up. And sometimes we're not. And sometimes if you try and just force those numbers onto the bar, you'll end up developing bad habits like squatting high, because you're just not ready for that yet. You force that, you haven't earned it. And that's not to say it's a bad thing, just shit happens. Life happens. So one thing that, again, just to make it slightly different to the live that I did, that I think is a really good piece, that I actually had a conversation with my client Vince about recently. We were talking something slightly different, but it's the same thing, is that sometimes to get away from this expectation of I need to be better than last time, that is where like this variation can be super useful. And Josh, your experience recently is a really good example about this, because when you were doing those front squats recently, I think you said you hadn't done them in
ever, basically.
Yeah, ever. Well, yeah, at the very least, fucking years and years and years, right?
Looks like it.
So straight away, there's no expectation of it. There's no expectation of I need to do 100 for 5. I need to do better than last time, because you have the last time was fucking years ago, or in your case, never. And you can find 1,000,001 different variations that challenge people in different ways and that allow them to have no expectations. So variation can be a really powerful mental tool to get people out of that bullshit mindset of like, I need to do better, especially when they've had a rough run, and allow them to just go in without expectation. And instead of having an expectation on the number, just having a good focus on doing some hard shit.
Doing it well.
So like, I find that, if you find that somebody is squatting high because they're putting too much weight on the bar, give them a variation, and it could be one of the ones we mentioned, or it could be something completely fucking different, some weird lift that you saw online, I don't care, whatever it is. Could be a fucking chuck of chains on the bar, whatever, I don't care. Like, but it's just something to go like, I have no idea what I can lift on this, therefore there's no expectation of the weight. And then it's way easier when that's the case to pick the right weight and focus on, like Alex said, they're doing it right, I find. So like, variation can be a really powerful tool to in powerlifting, where we do super repetitive stuff to get us away from that I have to beat last time mindset.
That's what I love about like a week 1 of a block, where it's just like, you're just setting the tone. You know what I mean? Your goal is just to get in there and like figure it out a little bit. Like, what kind of weight am I using for this RPE and this intensity? What am I going to do to set the tone for the block? And especially if you can do that well on your first week, and then you've got a point in which you can build on from there. And then also maybe quantify your technique a little bit, that it's like, okay, if I'm going to take the weight up this block, let's make sure the technique at least stays somewhat sound as I do that, rather than like what you were saying, just put load on the bar for the sake of it and missing out on some of these qualities that we're looking for.
I think some people severely underestimate the power of moving a weight better, but keeping the same weight for continuous weeks.
Yeah.
Especially through a prep. Like, if you go week 1 and for whatever reason you pick a weight and it's an RP 8, and you keep that same weight for 3 to 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden by week 4 it's an RP 6, that's progression.
It's great progression.
And they underestimate that massively. They're just like, oh, no, but I need more weight. It's like, well, you don't.
It's hard.
Move
It
that weight
takes
better.
a very...
it takes a long time to think that. Like, it
takes
took
a person
me
with a good worldview.
4 preps to think like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, there was like, if I was not progressing in weight by even 5 kilos in like my second prep, I was like, no, I'm fucking backwards. I'm not ready. I'm not doing this. Blah,
I was
blah.
the same, 100%.
And then the start of my last prep, I think we kept the same weight for 4 weeks straight. And I fucking loved it because it was just like, no, I'm confident I can squat. I know I can do this weight.
Really
lock
just move it better. Yeah, just move it better. And then by week 4, it was flying.
Especially once you're advanced, because like you're not building tissue and you're definitely not developing skill because you're good at it now at the same rate as when, a few years ago, whatever, when you first started doing it. So like things aren't expected to get better at the same rate.
No.
So then it's as an advanced athlete, you just have to be okay with sometimes just sticking around the same, knowing that if it was a stimulus last week, it's still going to be a stimulus this week. There still needs to be a progression over time. I don't want people to do the same weights forever and get stuck in that mindset as well. You can definitely be there, but
it's not the end of the world either if you repeat
doing it a couple weeks or a few weeks in a row is honestly like the effect that it's the stimulus, the stress that it's going to cause your body is so minimally different that it's not going to like slow progression greatly. But yeah, good point as well. But yeah, you said that first week of a block. When you're doing all these things for the first time, that is super powerful. But yeah, I'm just saying because like obviously like people will do in a prep, they'll do 5s and then 3s and then 1s and then they'll go and they'll do back to 5s and back to 3s and back to 1. And it's just this repeat. And I'm not saying that's a bad approach, but for everyone that'll work. But for those people who are locked in, I need to do better than last time. Sometimes it can be a rough experience if the cards aren't going your way a little bit. So variation can be really powerful then.
Nice.
I found. So,
I think that's...
Yeah, that wasn't it kind of related to squat depth, but
it definitely did.
But just a slightly different viewpoint than the generic answer. Even though our answer isn't the generic answer, because I looked up on YouTube before I did the fucking Instagram live.
What was it?
They were all just saying to squat deeper, just you've got shit ankles and you need to improve your ankle mobility. And I was like, this is like the top 3 results. Like, no wonder people are fucking confused. I don't know what it was.
One.
Probably, but yeah, 3
squat
different.
You number 1. Your ankle mobility shit. Buy my $300 squat shoes.
Yeah,
that'll fix it.
Easy fix.
Should sell some Nexus shoes.
No. What? Compete with Nike or something? I don't think we have the budget.
Come with Bowser teeth marks in them.
Yeah. Come pre-shoes. Yeah. All right. Any other squat issues that you have outside of these 3? DM us and we can talk about it in our next squat issues
Give you
podcast.
Some good cues,
some good thoughts, some good banter.
Yeah,
easy,
lovely,
nice.
Thank you for listening to the Nexus Unloaded podcast. Be sure to jump on our website to find details on everything mentioned in the podcast today, plus information on our coaching, mentoring, and gyms based in the Gold Coast and Townsville. Make sure you follow us on our Instagram for any updates on what we are currently doing, and we'll see you all in the next episode.